Distinguished hosts from Eurasia Research and Social Science and Humanities Research Association, distinguished guests from all over the world, it is my privilege and pleasure to take part of such an extraordinary conference that unfolds in out of ordinary circumstances. As a matter of fact, these times made us more global than we already were. For instance, the organizers are located in one ancient cradle of human civilization in Asia. This event virtually takes place in one cradle of human civilization located in Europe, in Rome, a wonderful city that my country, Romania, owes its beautiful name. My name is Octavian Dragomir Jora. I'm associate professor at the Bucharest University of Economic Studies in Romania and founder and editor-in-chief of the Market for Ideas magazine. My presentation starts from a title that has something to do with a passion of mine, which I've covered both as a scholar and as a journalist. The market for ideas and its triple filter: scientific pertinence, economic profit, and political permission. As a matter of fact, someone who hears for the first time this concept, the market for ideas, may wonder what's this all about. Ideas are about almost everything, so my presentation is supposed to be about everything. As a matter of fact, no, I'm not able to speak about everything. As well, I'm not able to speak about nothing. I remember a very fancy sitcom, American sitcom called Seinfeld, which was designed and devised from the outset to be a series about nothing, and it proved to be a very successful series. But this kind of nothingness, and in the same measure, speaking about everything, is hard to be successful in our life, in which we are rather intrigued about punctual things, not about broader themes that sometimes, if not almost always, exceed the scope and scale of our powers and projections. So I speak about the market for ideas because it is a concept that uncovers very wide yet very tight range of things. Ideas are valuable, despite the fact that they seem to not be so scarce, and in economics, scarcity is associated with value. Things are more valuable as they are more scarce, and this thing seems to be on the contrary with how we portray and depict ideas, which seem to be abundant, and as a matter of fact, they seem to be of at least hard to value, if not very much close to be available at all. So the presentation for today is a little bit streamlined to imagine that I've associated with the idea of the market for ideas. Ideas, no matter how abundant or scarce they may be, have to pass some filters in our lives in order to be considered valid, valuable, and able to document and inform our actions and our endeavors. And as a matter of fact, I have discovered, I'm not invented, I've discovered three environments in which these markets for ideas manifest themselves, and in these environments there are three different kinds of truths with or without quotation marks that can be discovered and that can be reached at with the help of some filters specific to each of these three dimensions of the markets for ideas. I try to devise a sort of ABC for these markets for ideas in order to make it easy to keep a record on the evolution of my presentation. And A is from Agora, B is from bazaars, and 3 is from cathedra. All of these hypotheses, dimensions, features, frameworks of the markets for ideas have some kind of outlets in which ideas are metabolized, digested, and at the end of these processes of combustion and transformation, there are some criteria, some filters that help us find out which ideas are worth pursuing. So, for instance, in cathedra is a concept that is associated with the scientific dimension of the market for ideas. We have epistemic communities, and within these epistemic communities, there is scientific pertinence that validates or invalidates ideas. Concomitantly, we have a sort of economic dimension of the markets for ideas, and I call this dimension bazaars. They are made up of business enterprises that need to use as a factor of production the good ideas, and the good ideas are validated by the ultimate end that each and every business enterprise has, and this is economic profit. Economic profit documents which ideas are worth following and which ideas need to be set aside. And finally, the political dimension of the markets for ideas are the agora. Here we have authorities that somehow give us the permission to profess and process certain ideas that are in accordance with their own beliefs and convictions regarding to the well-being and welfare of societies. Of course, these three dimensions of the markets for ideas are working intermingledly. They're somehow entangled among themselves, and this makes this process of finding the truly valuable idea quite difficult, a really tough undertaking. In the prologue, I have to say a few words about how can we locate these markets for ideas, of course, locate in a symbolical sense, which are the environments in which these competing truths, scientific, economic, and political, are being manifest, and where our own presence as scholars, as entrepreneurs, or as political persons give us the power to select those ideas and to make them spread in the communities. I start this image with a lecture that Karl Popper, famous philosopher and epistemologist, gave in 1978. It's called Three Worlds. Karl Popper identified world one that is made of natural material bodies, a world two that is made of mental states or processes, and the world three is made of final products of the human mind. The market for ideas is located particularly where objects from the world 2 become objects of the world 3. From the mental states or processes, we extract, we squeeze the final products of our human mind that are embodied in ideas that have a sense of consistency and a propensity to be used in real matters. And these ideas, far from being free-floating or scarcity-free objects, they are serviceable factors of production that can be produced in a calculated manner. We calculate or optimize which ideas to produce and which ideas are to be given up by resourceful producers that have their own resources, invest them, and fuel this process of finding the right ideas and advancing the products that are based on them. And this process is subject to economic or profit-seeking judgments. Of course, ideas have also been associated with the freedom of expression, which is not perfect, which is amended, not to say in some instances hampered by the authorities who exert their power in directing ideas outcomes. So in order to picture the whole process more easily, we have to have in mind a representation such as this one, in which the most valuable ideas lie at the intersection of equally and simultaneously scientific pertinence, economic profitability, and political permissiveness. The ideas that are scientifically sound, that can bring us profit, and that can be allowed to spread for the society gives us the permission to use them in our undertakings, are the most valuable ideas. Of course, this trinity of filters is very hard to find as a precondition for each and every idea we happen to advance in our life. Some ideas are scientifically true and profitable, but are inconvenient for authorities. Some ideas are profitable and convenient for the authorities, yet they have no scientific ground. Or some ideas are true, they have political permission, but as a matter of fact, they are not found valuable within the market processes because it's rather interesting to profess the contrary ideas because they can be. So first part of my presentation has to deal with the scientific dimension of the market for ideas that is composed by cathedra and is populated by epistemic communities that use the criteria, the filter of scientific pertinence in order to validate or invalidate ideas. For instance, I'm an economist, and I'm always caught in these endless disputes that happened in this science. Some colleagues of mine consider them hardly noticeable, yet I found them very, very deep and very consequential for the destiny of the economic profession, how we understand economics as a science, what can we say about the methods, and how can we find reliable or not the results acquired with these methods, whether they're not suitable for the nature of this science. So there is an old question, which is the proper way to study inanimate nature, and what is the proper way to study human action? Is there one way and one way only to study all these things? And the answer is no, there are different things. We are caught in a world in which economists try to replicate the instruments, the toolboxes of physical sciences, because they allegedly provide more rigor, and try to import them in economics. But this way is a little bit deceptive, because human action does not seem very much like the way particles, physical particles behave in nature. Human actors have free will, so studying them as they might be inert particles that obey certain determined laws and simply react to outside forces that are exerted upon them is not the best way to understand our species. So we are caught between science and scientia, as the old Latin said, and scientism. We have to discern between what I think to be the proper way to study man, and this is rather a priori, logical deductive, and purely rationalist, rather than a posteriori, inductive, or and experimental, as in natural sciences. So always have an eye on this very particular aspect. For also in human sciences, there is another dualism that takes place. It is between theory that informs us about time, place, person, invariant aspects of worldly affairs, and history that speaks about particular contingent past circumstances. You don't have to mix them. We can build a theory on history, but use history in research history by using the proper theory that previously you've discovered by means of a priori, logical, deductive, and rationalist method. The case of economics, as I've said, is paramount in this Methodenstreit. And the way economics evolved in the last century or centuries pays tribute to the way economists wanted to bring closer their own science to the more established body of physical sciences. I recommend a very fine article written by a Spanish economist, Jesus Huerta de Soto, speaking about the ongoing Methodenstreit of the Austrian school, which is one of the dissident school in regards to the mainstream neoclassical Keynesian body of and core of the economic science. And very much informative and instructive is the case of the Nobel Prizes, which gratifies the contribution to economic science, and they tend to validate more and more this physical resemblance of economics, which I have my reason to understand that is not the wisest way to do things in economics, despite the fact that wise men try to certify this route in economics. The definition of the market for ideas is made of bazaars that are populated by business enterprises that use economic profit in order to validate the good ideas that are used as inputs in productive processes. Here, profit and loss are the criteria that entrepreneurs use. The entrepreneurs cover very rich distribution of social functions or catalactic functions, if you want to use the wording of the Austrian school scholars. For instance, Frank Knight or Ludwig Mises speaks of developing a judgment to anticipate future developments. Joseph Schumpeter speaks of introducing change in the economic system through innovation. Israel Kirzner speaks of identifying opportunities and correcting errors through special insight or alertness to change. All these economists try to locate the entrepreneur in this economic landscape and try to assign the most representative function that he covers. And in this quest for profits, entrepreneurs are very alert. They are open to creatively destroy old establishments of ideas and invest resources in pursuing a certain path and leaving aside another in terms of ideas that can bring profits to fruition. Very interesting is the case in which economic ideas, poor economic ideas, seem to be for a short span of time profitable, despite the fact that they end up in a mess. And this happens when we speak about boom-bust cycles, in which many entrepreneurs, blinded by the possibility of acquiring profits, big chunks of profits, are relying on scientifically problematic ideas, economic ideas. Is an euphemism for illusions, errors in terms of knowledge, economic knowledge. They use these false, fake inputs in their production processes. They acquire up to a certain point profits, but in the end, everything goes down and the bubble bursts, and the profits turn out to be losses. This issue with boom-bust cycles is a very critical aspect in modern economic theory. It was being uncovered differently. There were assigned different causes to this phenomenon, and of course there were assigned different repairing tools when they happen to become real problems beyond the abstract reasoning associated to them. Different economists try to propose instruments of taming the problems, but they are as erroneous as the rationale of entrepreneurs that entered this process of a booming economy were, and of course these cumulating errors of scholars, policymakers, and entrepreneurs give rise to severe economic. And thirdly, we get to the third dimension of the markets for ideas, that is agora. They are populated by authoritarian establishments then that use the tool of political permission in order to allow or to deny certain ideas to circulate in society by their own judgment of being, they say at least, useful for the people and useful in a let's say sustainable manner. Of course, as we were already informed as economists by the let's say public choice school or by the institutionalists, the politicians are not selfless beings that are only concerned with the welfare and the wealth of the population, but they want to maximize their own political profit, let's say, and they tend to advance ideas that serve their own purpose, and to block ideas that are contrary to this purpose, despite the fact that society might gain more by being allowed to profess and process another ideas that happen not to be so pleasing for the big ones, for the authorities. And we have, of course, the endless issue of the state as an institution. It was treated in social science literature with either a sympathetic attitude, for instance, by the Greek-Roman classics, by Hobbes, by Locke, by Rousseau, by Bentham, by Mill, by Hegel, by Weber, by Fukuyama, among the contemporary thinkers, or with a skeptical mind. We think of Lao Tzu, the English liberalist movement, the French Harmonist school. Even Karl Marx was not a very great fan of the state, and of course the toughest detractors of the state apparatus are the modern and contemporary anarcho-libertarians, Gustav de Molinari, Lysander Spooner, Franz Oppenheimer, Ludwig von Mises, Friedrich August von Hayek, or Maureen Newton Rothbard. Depending on the attitude we have with respect to the state, to the government, to the political establishment, you can understand that this is the source of malinvestments, if I can use this economic term, in matters of ideas, because they tried to instill in the society's ideas that are more favorable to political obedience, to political serfdom, to political tyranny, in a sense, and they try either by censorship or by corruption to favor these kinds of ideas that serve the political establishment at the expense of the rest of the population. I came from Romania, as I've confessed from the outset, and it's a very interesting case study in Romanian socialism with respect to how ideas were produced or tried to survive. Some ideas side by side with the wrong ideas that were state policy at that time, and how this inertia, historical inertia, can explain the way Romania evolved after the anti-communist, anti-socialist revolutions in 1989, because it lacked a political momentum due to the fact that it was one of the most it was subject to one of the most severe processes of censorship and corruption in terms of ideas during the reign of communism. Or epilogue. I know that my presentation may look a little bit eclectical or even erratic. As a matter of fact, speaking about a very unconsolidated concept in social sciences, which is the market for ideas, that is being treated much like a metaphor than as a full-fledged notion. But despite these things, I try to consider that discussion in terms of the markets for ideas are useful as a program of study. My presentation speaks about the program of studies, not as a project that began today and ended with the last click on my presentation, but is as an evolving program of study that I think it's useful in documenting the way ideas are born, are living, and die within societies at the crossroads of scientific communities, at the cross with business enterprises and political establishments, Those ideas that hopefully survive all these three criteria and all these three tests might represent the most consolidated part of the human knowledge and the source of its sustainable advancement, progress along ages, along epochs. So I think it is useful only for the reason that ideas, no matter how abundant or scarce, are a factor of production, a critical factor of production in our lives, and we need to be equipped with the best supply possible in terms of factors of production in order to be served with the best supply of consumption products, if I may say so. Thank you very much for watching my presentation. I am anxiously waiting for your live comments and replies, for your questions, or for your answers to my unanswered questions. And I end up with a kind invitation to click on this website link, themarketforideas.com. Take a look at this publication and be part of it. Be one person, valuable person in this wide and exquisite community of readers and writers that covers at this very moment 202 countries and territories of the world. An astonishing accomplishment for a magazine that uses as input not necessarily money, don't rely on political permission, but uses scientific pertinence in order to advance and progress. Thank you very much, and let's hope we meet some time, somewhere, safe and sound, face to face. Bye bye.